Cordy. Okay, we are back again today to continue our discussion of the precepts of creativity, of which there are 10. We did the last 5, or the first 5 rather, in our previous podcast. And this time we're going to dive into the latter half of the precepts, starting with.
Well, let's go back. The first, just to review, the first is that there's an inner and an outer, an internal and an external.
So the precept 1,
Number
right?
1,
Inner and outer.
the abstract component and the concrete component. And then creativity is useful. And then number 3, it's novel, it's new. Number 4, it's transformative. It transforms us. It's transcendent. And number 5 is it's transportive. It takes creativity to get your ideas from the abstract to the concrete. It takes creativity to convey. And so it's transportive. It helps us transcend. So then after number 5, we're going to move on to number 6 today, which is sustaining.
Right.
And then let's just go through them all really quick. Number 7. Okay. So after sustaining, creativity is sustaining. Creativity, number 7, has a process. And number 8, creativity has a product. Pretty obvious. There's a process involved to our creative endeavors, and there's a product. And then number 9, creativity is unifying. I hate giving it away. And let's save number 10 for the end.
It'll be a surprise.
It'll be a surprise because it's just a big climax. It's just so powerful. Can't wait to get there.
Awesome. So guide us through it. So first, it's sustaining. So what do you mean by sustaining? What do you mean when you say that?
Well, when we use the pot as the metaphor, because that helps us remember. That's the only reason I can remember is what the hell did I mean when I wrote that 3 years ago? What did I mean by sustaining? Well, we'll start with the pot being a metaphor for creativity. It's sustaining, which means women and medicine men would gather herbs and they dry them in the pot. They sustained us. So the pot is sustaining because it's a whole, it holds those things. And we talked earlier about how it's transformative, which means like you put the boiling water in a pot and you take a root and it softens it. So sustaining means the pot is what sustains. It's used to sustain us, as a metaphor. Just the pot can hold all that stuff that we need. But in human terms, and not a metaphor for the pot, creativity is sustaining in that without it, the human race would not be sustained. We made fire. Like, let's go way back in time. We made fire. We made the wheel. All kinds of creative inventions are what sustain us, right? But we're not there anymore. So what does sustaining mean to us today? So I listened to a really great podcast with a guy named Jordan Peterson and fell in love with him because he's a little older than I am and he's so smart. And he talked a lot about how we are wired for struggle. And without a conflict and without a problem to solve, we're just not human. And that reminded me of creativity because it takes creativity, because it takes creativity to solve problems. And so one of the ideas that I put in the book that you may or may not have gotten to, I don't know, is that we're wired for struggle and that we create our own problems when there is not a problem. Because we don't have to battle the weather anymore. Okay, here's a story. We went camping at up north at the beach, Gaviota. And it really taught me because the wind came up so bad, it totally ripped our tent up and out of the earth, and we had to go sleep in the car. And I just kind of stayed up and listened all night to the wind, and I felt like I don't know you, Earth, like I would know you if I was born at a different time. And I just felt like this is a part of the earth I didn't know. It was so violent. And I mean, I know earthquakes and I know really cold storms, but this wind had a personality. Crazy. So I felt a little bit disconnected from the earth by, having to go sleep in the truck. But the whole idea with why I bring it up is that our connection to the earth is maybe less than it should be because creativity connects us.
Right.
And when we don't have to battle the elements, anymore, we don't have these struggles that our ancestors had. We
Mm.
create our own struggles.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's true. And I think in a sense, it's almost like we have this reserve of creative energy and it has to go somewhere, right?
Right.
And it used to be doing things to connect us to our life and our lifestyle, right? And now we're like, oh, here's the house, here's the lights. Okay, what do I do with myself, right? So
Yes,
it's
yes.
interesting.
Well, and we tend to go on those rabbit trails of this buttercup yellow is not the right color for this tile. I wanted, pale yellow. I don't even know colors. And
Yeah.
so this is a true story. So we
Yeah.
make problems like, these baseboards are only 2 inches and I prefer 6-inch baseboards. So I'm gonna rip up the whole house. And this is not me, by the way. I could not justify that. Whatever. Anyway, we make problems like we self-sabotage things in our lives because we make goals and then we get in our own way sometimes to fulfill those goals because we definitely need to unravel something. I spoke with the chaplain. He is my mom's chaplain
Mhm.
because my mom is in home hospice. And he's been a really great therapist for me. And he talked to me about resilience. And he said, this was just yesterday. He said, some people make a really big deal out of everything. And then some people have what we call resilience, and they can just about handle anything life throws at them. And I thought, I wonder which one am I? And I said, I'm absolutely both. I make the biggest deal out of everything, but I'm so resilient. I always get up and I keep going.
Mhm.
So that creativity in the left brain and I mean in the right brain and the problem solving in the left brain, when you can piece it together and solve your problems, you can kind of rise up, and I'll rise up, right? if
Yeah.
if you can get a handle on it in that regard. So I just liked that he said the resilience thing
Mhm.
about, when life throws problems at you, but sometimes those problems are our own making, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So on that note, you talk about how the brain feeds off new experiences, and then you say these conscious psychic choices change the landscape of our brains. So, the choice of, whether you want the yellow pain or the light yellow pain or whatever, these are like opportunities for us to get that novelty that our brain is seeking. Is
Mhm.
that kind of what you're saying?
Well, when we do create something novel, which is like number 2 or 3 of the components, our brain is always seeking novel. So on the micro, we would be seeking novel, like our muscles want a new exercise, right? So walking is good, but then throwing in some high intensity running for a minute is even better. Kind of change things up a little, do new routines. Sometimes, like just closing your eyes and digging through your purse for something without looking, or walking through the house in the dark. Just those little things can change the landscape of your brain.
Hmm.
And I think that what Jordan Peterson might be getting at, and what the whole idea of solving your problems, um, you when you learn something, you grow new dendrites, or you extend the roots of those dendrites and then the branches of those dendrites. There is a real physical change in your brain when you learn something new, even if it's learning the skill of meditation or like how to dunk a basketball, things that you think are not, necessarily brain activity, but they are. So that is kind of what I mean by the novel experience. That one section in the book might be misplaced in the ebook because it should be with the novel, but if it's at the end, it's still they're all overlap all over the place.
Right.
It's really hard to stay linear.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. And then so number 7 is process. Can you explain what that is?
Well, I think you have your finger on the pulse of the beauty and the importance of process, because like when you do your art now and the painting that you don't have out anymore, but little things that you've been working on, even when you were just making the candles and just enjoying the smell, and even like somebody making a garden. Andre and I have been talking about that. My sister's a gardener. You're a gardener. Just
Mhm.
having your fingers in the soil. The last article I read about it said that it releases molecules that will give you like a rush in your brain, like a happy rush, that it's the soil and the smell and the feel of it that's really, really healthy for you. So
Yeah.
anything that involves process, so like to use the pot as the example, the pot beforehand, before it's a hard piece of clay, it's wet clay, and you have to hit it and hit it and hit it and hit it and hit it so that all the air bubbles come out of it. And then you shape it, then you fire it, then you glaze it, then you fire it, then you glaze it, then you fire it. And this is all after you've collected it in the lake. It's a lot, it's a big process, it's arduous and a lot of people are artists, but they don't even touch sculpture because
Yeah.
then what happens if you didn't get all the air bubbles out, it blows up. So process for the pot is huge. And actually I have pictures of potters and I refer back to that all the time. So on the micro, um, when you think of beating the clay to get the air bubbles out so that it's useful and novel and can perform its function,
Mhm.
blow up, think of like your life and what is pounding you at the time to get
Yeah.
your air bubbles out, right? So if you're having a hard time, it makes you stronger and it gets you ready to perform your function. So that's on the micro. So, and then, any creative work for me as a writer, especially like writing a book, there's a long, arduous process. For a poem, not so much, For making candles, there's a process, right?
Yeah.
For,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the focus on the process is something that I'm constantly practicing and constantly coming back to. It's sort of my antidote to everything in my life. For
right.
instance, if it's, you're gardening and all your plants die, then you're like, what was the point? And really the point was getting your fingers in the dirt, you know?
Yes, and same with cooking, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally, totally. And when I get my fingers in the dirt, using that as an example, or I get my fingers messy with paint, there is that initial, there's a certain place of consciousness that I'm in where I'm like, I don't want dirty hands. I don't want paint on my clothes. I don't want, whatever. It's like the adult controlling mind.
Yeah.
And then when you're able to surrender that and say, you know what? I'm just going to do this and not even pay heed to, there's a certain kind of letting go, right? Of
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
embracing it, right? And then I would say in my own personal experience, that's when you really connect to what you're
Yeah.
doing and connect to the
Yeah.
moment.
Well, and you can get somewhat addicted to that. I personally am not because I always have too many things distracting me. But obviously, I'm taking care of my mom these days, and I can't tell you how many years I spent very, very mad at her for being a really shitty housekeeper.
Mhm.
I spent a lot of time being mad at her, especially once I became, not when I was younger, but when I became, a mom and I had a house and I put the easel over here and the paints, yes, they were out. It was just like my house that I grew up in. But, we cleaned it up when we were done. But my mom got very addicted to all the processes. And as I've said before, she did everything. She made a mask of my face with latex. She painted. So all of those processes, she became so you have these things in your brain called peptides, and they receive things. So the more you do something, the more you get a peptide that wants to receive that. So
Right.
on the negative, that's like if you're raised with someone yelling at you, you've got peptides waiting to receive yelling. So
Yeah.
then you're going to marry someone who yells at you because you can't help it. So you have to meditate and you really have to replace those dendrites. I mean, those peptides. You have to replace them with new peptides, or
Right.
you that's that rut thing. So you can get addicted to whatever process you're doing and never care about the product. So this is so fascinating that I put an entire chapter on process. The entire chapter is process, and then right after that is product. So this we're just tickling the fact that there is a process, and for the clay pot, the process is arduous, and for creative endeavors, there's a process like planting a seed and watching it grow, but there's also a process in us, and this is pretty much what your classes and your whole canon, your whole approach to life is that while enjoying the process of whatever you're doing, you are in the process of becoming yourself.
Right.
So, in the book I talk about on the macro, I talk about Freud's
Mhm.
capitulation theory, where he likens human nature, like our species. He takes the whole species and he says, what if the whole, we've talked about this, I think. What if the whole species was a character? So maybe in, medieval times, that's your toddler, right? That's when we were in our
Sure.
toddler stage where we just kicked and screamed and we got what we wanted.
Yeah.
And maybe our teenager stage is when we get a little bit cocky, and we think we've got it all together, and then
Right.
someone comes and conquers us, maybe the fall of Rome. I don't know. That was completely backwards, but there's just the idea that us as a species, we're all growing, and we're progressing, we're evolving to maybe not aliens, but at least closer to a higher being than maybe we were when we were cave people.
Sure. Just simply through self-awareness.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
So, I talked just a little bit about that kind of a process for the micro and the macro, and then in the next few chapters, we dive right into the process of becoming and how our creative exercises and acts and behaviors and projects, they help us become who we are on the psychic level. It's not
Right.
about the artwork at that point. So I can't wait to get to that.
Yeah. And in a way you could even call that product, or would you differentiate?
Um, yeah, they're all so intertwined that
Yeah.
it's hard to separate. But yeah,
Yeah.
that would be the product. And well, here I go. I'm going to jump ahead. One of the byproducts or the results of, you know, the process of becoming is that you get more confidence. All these other things happen, and those are products. You can't see them. You can't see, I have more confidence. I
Right.
am a confident 57-year-old. You
Yeah.
can't see that. That is not a concrete product, but it's
Sure.
indeed a product. It's a byproduct. It's a result of your creative endeavors.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's interesting because, in the extreme example, we're talking about process, like the person who's obsessed with process where they never finish anything, which I would say is like a retardation sort of the creative process. Because like you say, if product and process are a part of the creative process, then just beginning, right? The just, starting 10,000 projects and never finishing is not actually the full cycle of creativity,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, I think in the book I talk about false starts, like when you have
Right.
a novel, and they're called false starts. So you start a novel, or whatever project, you have a false start. Well, to me, it's not a false start. It's a stepping stone to the one that's going to be the thing.
Yeah.
That nothing's a waste.
It's like the homework, right?
Yeah, it all contributes. And so there's that whole self-judgment, which I learned in your class, to be kind to myself and not to expect, absolute success, and not to call a false start, let's say, a failure.
Yeah.
It's not a failure. It will contribute to the whole canon, to the whole
Right.
life's work in some way. You are learning from it. So let's just say my mom started 1,000, 2,000 projects and never finished one, which is not true. Um, Now that I look back on her life and what it meant for me, I don't put a value judgment on that. I see being able to lose yourself in your creative acts all day sometimes, and drag your family into it, and drag the neighbors into it, and drag the school kids into it.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I just really missed the boat of a good amount of my era in my older life, because I did want things nice and tidy. And
Mhm.
I missed out on a lot of that. And to bring my mom up again, sometimes we're sad because she never quit smoking. God bless her. She just couldn't. And so
Mhm.
she does have COPD. And so we were talking about the fact that she wasn't good to herself and she didn't take care of herself. And then I kind of said, no, that's not true. She did whatever the fuck she wanted when she wanted, and part of that was she wanted a cigarette, and she was completely immersed in what she wanted to do. She never ignored us. She took care of our needs, but then at 3 in the morning, she was out there. So
Yeah.
I'm seeing for the first time, even before I wrote this book. I mean, after I wrote the book, I wrote the whole book before I realized all of this.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was theoretical for me. It was in the books that I read, and in the scaffolding that I was preparing. My mom is living what I wrote in those chapters, and I never gave her that credit.
Yeah.
So it was obviously inside of me somewhere. But in all the time I maybe wanted to judge her for not finishing what she started, not realizing that her process of becoming looks different than mine. And only later in her life did she want to start making money off her art. And so she worked together with my brother, who's a professional artist and writer. He's a published author, and they published a book together and stuff. But that was all after she was like 76 years old. She decided
Right.
maybe wanted to make some money at it. So
Yeah.
anyway, all of that to say, I don't know. It can be a retardation. It can be an indicator that you are right here in your process, but one day you're going to be here. So it's okay to be there, and retardation just means a slowed down version of
Yeah.
the rest of the people. It's not a bad thing. We're really not allowed to say it anymore. I don't know what we're supposed to say. What are we supposed to say?
Well, I think it's okay in that context, like fire
Okay.
retardant, or I'm not sure, but
In music, we'll have a music lesson, and I'll say, okay, retard. Oh no, I don't mean retard.
retardando.
No, I don't mean that. I mean, just take it slower. Like you can't say certain things. I'm always so afraid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I think that that's what Stephen Pressfield is a little bit where I got this idea about my mom and how I'm fleshing it out on these conversations with you is Stephen Pressfield was very hard on people for he wants you to get your shit together so you can finish that novel. He wants you to learn how to do that. And I thought, no, you're being too harsh.
Right. Because I think not that it's bad to complete things, like that's wonderful. And if you want to complete things and you want to get coaching from that type of a person, that quality of, like kind of tough love, kick your ass kind of thing, that makes sense. But I think that as a fundamental philosophy of life, it skips over the value of process and the inherent value of the person just as an individual, right?
Yeah. Without something to hand to the world. Like, aren't we allowed to just be in whatever fashion we choose to be? Like, do I have to end up with a product to give to the world and make money to be whatever?
Right.
To be viewed as whatever? Yeah, I mean, this is to me, this is fascinating. The whole idea of the process and what we value in our culture, maybe.
Sure.
And so when you do look at children, we talk about this in the book, how they love to just build the block thing and then they love knocking it down, right? Because they love the doing of the thing. And we talked a little bit about the autotelic. We went to that text box with Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi and how he talks about autotelic and what it does to our bodies and our brains and our blood pressure and all of that. There is a product there. It's just hidden. We can't quite see it.
Yeah, I love that metaphor too. It reminds me of when I taught preschool and I would build towers or whatever with the kids.
Yeah.
And then when they wanted to knock it down, especially at the beginning, it was like, no, don't knock it down. We just made this beautiful thing. And then I'd be like, wait, why do I want to approach it? Like, what am I trying to save this for? And I would laugh at myself because it's that adult mind that's like, no, don't get this dirty. No, I don't want dirt under my fingernails. No, it's like, and then you're just like, oh yeah, that's not a real thing. That's like this weird construct that I'm projecting onto the world. And then you're like, the freedom that comes from, let's knock it down,
Well, it's poignant, isn't it? It's a poignant vehicle to learn exactly what we're talking about. Breaks my heart when you think of those people who do ice sculptures. It just
right. Or the sand mandalas, like the Buddhist sand mandalas, right?
What are you going to work on that for 3 days straight, and then it's just going to? Or the people that do the chalk on the sidewalk, not the sidewalk. They do what is that called? Anyway,
sure.
they have those big art shows, and they're all on the ground.
Right.
And they're gone, and they're beautiful masterpieces, and then they're gone.
It's like Bert from what's it called? Mary, what's it called? Can't think of it.
I can't think of it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Anyway, but yeah, so is there anything else you want to add to product before we go to the next one?
Well, we talked about the personal product that you can't see, which is better health maybe and more confidence. And sometimes you wrote a song and you feel really good about it. That's the product. And then on the macro, obviously in society, whatever has been created on the macro, that's a product. Let's go on and on and on for years and years, right? There's so just my phone, right?
Yeah.
And the pot, we take it for granted, but everything we have, like my coffee cup and the trash can is in the form of something like the pot.
Yeah.
And you just look around and go, I have never even been grateful for this.
Right. Yeah, like all the many things that we rely on in that form.
Yeah, I think in the book I talk about the printing press and um, what's the thing that, oh my God, the one that does the wheat so that we don't, what's the plow?
Separates the wheat from the
Yeah, the
chaff. Is it chaff? My
I
retrieval system is not working right now.
mine is not either. Okay, so there's the printing press
Yeah,
and medicine like the accidental discovery of penicillin.
yeah,
Then obviously science, and I don't want to say anything that has to do with war. That's why I'm trying not to say anything that has to do with war. But how about our cell phones, photography,
right.
all the things that make our lives, electricity, film, the storytelling that we can now put on film and have it whenever we want it, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that's the product. Okay, so we're gonna get to you. We're gonna get to number 9, but I don't know if we're gonna get to number 10. Ah, I'm
That's
so
okay. That's okay. Maybe number 10 deserves its own episode, but now we're at number 8. Is that right?
I think
After
we're
product.
what's the next one?
It's process and then product, right?
Process and then product, and then I think number 9 is unifying.
Oh, yeah. I'm counting wrong, I guess. 6, 7.
Yeah,
Oh,
product is 8. Yeah, product is 8.
product is 8.
Number
Okay.
9 is unifying. So the
Okay.
pot is unifying. So clearly, you put everything in the, let's say eggs and flour and sugar and chocolate chips. That's
Hmm.
going to be a cookie one day, and it unifies all the ingredients. And so that is the idea: is that the pot unifies us. Also, like if I have a tribe and I beat this, da, 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 everybody's going to come, oh, it's time to eat. And it brings us all together for a meal. My big pot of soup, my big pot of stew.
Yeah.
So it's a unifying thing and it's a big circle. So the circle represents unity. And
Yeah.
so the pot is unifying and creativity is unifying. And so in the book, there's plenty of examples, like
Yeah.
when we go to a concert or we all watch a movie together. But to pull the metaphor really, just to knock it over, to beat it to death, that originally, remember that the internal and the external, the inside is the abstract and the unseen, and the external is the seen and the product. So this is process and this is product. And this is also the inside is the individual and the outside is the world. It's the society. So if you just think of it that way for just a minute, then you look at the rim of the pot. And if this is the outside and this is the inside, if this is the society and this is the individual, where exactly is the line drawn between the society and the individual? Is
Right.
there a distinct point where
Yeah.
the outside ends and the inside begins? Or is the outside the inside? It's all one. So
Yeah.
to me, this is the most profound part of my metaphor, is that creativity unifies us on the individual level. It connects us to our deeper self, and it brings us something called atonement, at one-ment.
Yeah.
All of our creative acts connect us deeper to ourselves. And then when we share them with the world and we plug into the world, then we have our gift to society, which connects us with society. And so when you use the pot as the metaphor and you see that there is no distinction between the inside and the outside, there is no distinction between individual and society. That means we're one and that nothing is isolate.
Yeah. And I love how you differentiate this from transformation, right? Because you talk about the pot is where we combine the ingredients, they come in as separate entities and then they're mixed together, which you could argue is a transformation, right? But
Right.
it's beyond transformation in the sense that it's unity. It's an alchemy that through transformation, unity is achieved, you could say.
What really, I love that. I never once used the word alchemy in that whole book, I don't think. I love that word. It's perfect. So, yes, it is transformative because it holds the stuff and it takes it from flour to cookies. But beyond that, the function after that is to feed us. and to sustain us. And here comes all of them. They all just come on in that to help us transcend who would we be by ourselves without society, that we can't function in isolation. So the last one is the last one we could do, or we could meditate.
Number 9.
Number 10. Yeah, we're at 10. We're at the
That
last
was number 9. Before we move on though, I do want to just, a couple of these are really profound. A couple of these notes that you make is going back to the at one mint, which, I think a lot of people perceive that word as atonement. It's like atoning for your sins. It's like, it's not quite punishment, but it's kind of like you're groveling or you're on your knees, that kind of and you make the point that it infers a reconciliation with one's separate parts. It's at one mint, the integration and the wholeness and that inner unity that's brought on by creativity. And then you talk about Bohm again, and you talk about how he compares creativity with the realm of natural processes, ultimately suggesting that manifestations of creativity in humanity are not merely similar to the creative processes of nature. Rather, they are of the same intrinsic nature as the creative forces and the universe at large, which I think is so beautiful and so profound, because not only is the process itself bringing us into at one mint, but the process is also reminding us, invoking within us our intrinsic at one mint with nature at the same time. So good. So good.
And I think we made that joke before. I didn't make it up, because to hear it from David Bohm sounds to me a lot better than to hear it from like some new age, manifestation technique guru that doesn't have any scientific background or who hasn't spent years and years of study. So to hear from David Bohm literally changed my life. I keep saying that. I bought into it, especially as a Christian. I believed in everything being kind of separate, like,
Yeah.
And anyway, it took a long time to convince me. But then once I was forced to read him. I didn't want to read him. They made me read him at Burlington. So, and I told you this already. I had to read the book 3 times before I understood it. I wasn't smart enough to understand
But
it.
also look at how, most people wouldn't have done that. They'd read it once and maybe get the cliff notes, or they'd say this was a shitty book or whatever.
Right,
So
right.
yeah.
Right. And so and by the way, that is where and I know I've said this before on these talks, but that is where the point of separation became between the very famous Albert Einstein, thought leader and changer of culture, and David Bohm. So David Bohm never got to be the household name that Albert Einstein got to be, because he believed in this thing called fragmentation, which is everything being isolated, and he believed in wholeness and the implicate order. So
Right.
there's a small cult around that still follows the David Bohm teachings and draws spirituality into science, which it could be debunked. Like doing this whole TED Talk thing, I've been warned not to bring pseudoscience into it. So I'm like, well, I don't know. Is quantum physics pseudoscience or is it real? I don't know. I don't know how much I'm allowed to. Like, to me, it's scientific.
Sure.
It's not the same as just say your prayers and there's a
Right.
rainbow.
Well, the interesting thing is, Bohm made it very eloquent and kind of put it together in a coherent way. But that concept, the concept as above, so below, as within, so beyond, so without, is not new. It's not new at all. It's in all wisdom traditions in at some place when you dig, right? So especially Eastern wisdom traditions, but really everywhere.
Let's do the meditation on that.
Yeah, that's what I
want
was
to do this.
thinking. I was thinking,
too.
I'm here looking at the last couple quotes that I've highlighted on number 9. The whole lay implicit in each part and is therefore present in an implicate way within the body. This is Bohm. And then this is you, possibly I'm not sure if you're quoting him or not, but you say, from this perspective, creativity is the underlying drive to be part of an unbroken whole, an impulse toward fitting that is behind all activities.
That is David Bohm, and that is my TED Talk. That is it. Everything we do, that drive that we have that drives us crazy, is our drive to be part of humanity, part of something greater. And it does keep you up at night sometimes, right?
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Nothing,
Tell me about it.
nothing is isolate. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's the last one. We'll close it. Number 10 is that creativity is the container that holds all things together. It holds me together on the inside, that reconciliation you were talking about, and it holds society together. All of the creative acts that we talked about, like a march, your heartbeat synchronizes as you march, or in a choir, or just all of the things that our creative acts do to unify us.
Yeah.
Um, it's what is supposed to hold us together. And therefore, you heard it here, creativity is the property of the collective.
Right.
It's not to be hijacked by individuals to make money and commercialize and capitalize on ideas. Creativity is the property of the collective. And had Thomas Edison or Tesla or whoever invented the printing press, had those people thought that, we'd be left with nothing. Our creativity is for the whole. That
Right. Not only for the whole, but what connects us to the whole, what reminds us of our intrinsic belongingness to the whole. Right.
And without it, we would not be anywhere. And so we do inherit it. There's a scientific component to it. We inherit in our DNA. We inherit creativity. We inherit ideas. We inherit cells. We inherit memories. All of this inheritance, it's that's where creativity propels us. Just like our species, just like David Bohm was talking about, that nature herself has the same things, and we're not mimicking nature. We have it too. So, like the humpback whale will sing a song in this part of the world over here, and the same species of humpback whale will sing the same song, but they've never heard each other. And then that generation will die off, and a new note will be added every year. And both sets of whales on the opposite side of the globe will sing that song with the new note. That is what we are doing, and it's creativity in motion in life and causing us to thrive. So when we hijack that creativity for our own personal gain, it's really a ding on humanity, if you want to know the conundrum that I talk about in the book. So by understanding this whole vast concept of these 10 precepts of creativity and what it means to us on an individual level and on the societal level, it's life changing to know that everything we do can help us be part of something even greater since the beginning of time until the end of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And another great example that I can't let us go without mentioning is when you talk about Robert Henson in his book, Meteorology Today, of all things. He teaches that every breath of air we breathe contains trillions of molecules. Some of these gases become a part of our system while others are exhaled. Inside every sizable breath we take, there are as many molecules as stars in the universe. Each time we exhale, these air molecules enter the atmosphere, and even though they become mixed with other molecules, there's a chance we might inhale the same molecules as someone who lived thousands of years ago. There's only a small amount of chance, according to this biology of Professor Dr. Martin St. Maurice at Marquette University. We may share a version of the air molecules with others before us because these molecules because these molecules were held in Joan of Arc's, for instance, lungs. They've been rearranged and recycled through biochemical and geochemical processes. The connection lies in the shared matter, albeit changed matter, from dinosaurs' breaths to humans, from a decomposed tree to a newborn lamb. So living organisms share the atmosphere with others before us. Breath is plentiful, and the air is not something that must be rationed. So let's just end on that.
This all still makes me cry. That makes me cry. It's a fascinating thing to think how connected I am with, like, Joan of Arc or Keats or the animals or a dinosaur. Like,
yeah.
It's
With the Big Bang itself, right?
right. It's profound.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. We'll be back next week, and we'll unpack this some more.
Do you want to do a meditation?
Yeah, why don't we? Let's end with that. Okay. So let's go ahead and drop into our bodies. Let go of the concepts from the discussion. Let go of the analysis. And just tune into the sensations that arise. that are arising in the body in this present moment. Tuning into the immanence of the body, the immediacy of the body. While maintaining a soft awareness of that interconnectivity, of the fundamental truth that nothing in this present moment ever existed in the past or the future, but has only existed in the now. The ever-present, eternal now. That forms that we can name, different figures, different creatures have occupied this eternal now. And now other temporary forms occupy this eternal now. Forms named Crystal and Rene. Forms named the United States of America. Movements, celebrities, whatever it may be. And those are just more forms made up of the same life force, the same molecules, the same carbon fundamentally, expressing itself in different forms that exists eternally. That at base and at core is inseparable, immutable, indivisible. And with that awareness, continue to feel into the body. Letting the awareness rest on the breath. Experiencing directly the marvel that is the body, the living, breathing, existing body. Held in the eternal container of manifestation. Never not a part of it. Notice as the mind makes its attempts to take you out of this moment with thoughts about the future, thoughts about the past. Notice that mechanism in this context simply as a tool of division that doesn't need to be used. It's not bad, it's not good, it's just not useful right now. And every time you return to the body and the breath, you remind the mind that it can settle down like a little whining puppy or a toddler tugging on its mother's apron. And you can return to the immanent experiential expression of that oneness through the vehicle of the body, through the vehicle of the sensations of the body. Through the breath, enlivening the body. allowing the body to be the conduit that brings you back over and over to the now. And as you're ready, you can begin to become aware of the space around you. Become aware of the room that you're in, the building that you're in, the world going on outside, this contemplation. And when you feel firmly rooted in that awareness, you can go ahead and gently open the eyes. Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you. This teaming up just never stops amazing me, honestly. Thank you for that. And
Love
I do listen to the meditations later. That's why I kind of missed the last one. Thank you,
no.
Crystal. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
my pleasure.
All right.
Mwah.
Bye. Mwah. Love you.
Love you too.